Hello BioTube, we're going to continue on with our introduction to the animal kingdom. Our first topic in this video is going to kind of build off of what we talked about last time, more about the early development of animals when they're zygote and embryo stage. So during early development, the cells of most animal embryos differentiate, which means they change into 3 layers that are called germ layers. So again, this is just a way for us to look again at how closely things are related by looking at how they develop early on. And so the first layer that develops are the cells of the endoderm, and these are the innermost layer, so endo, inside, innermost germ layer, and these develop into the linings of digestive tract and much of the respiratory system. So you look at our picture, they kind of form more the inside or the yellow, and they're going to form things like the digestive tract and the respiratory system. Our next is the cells of the mesoderm, so this is our middle layer. These develop into muscles and much of the circulatory, reproductive, and excretory organ systems. So this mesoderm, meso means middle, they both begin with M, so that'd be an easy way to remember that. They develop into things like muscles and much of our circulatory, reproductive, and excretory organ systems. So then our last layer is the ectoderm, obviously ecto. This is going to be our outermost layer, and this will develop into the sense organs, nerves, and the outer layer of the skin. And again, we can kind of see how closely we are related to other animals by the types and how their different germ layers develop. And again, this is just a way for us to look at these and kind of help us better understand how animals have evolved over time. So our next one that we're going to look at to kind of help us understand animals more is body symmetry. So except for sponges, so symmetry is just kind of how the body is laid out. Hopefully we've heard the word symmetry before. So except for sponges, every animal exhibits some body symmetry in its structure. So that means that they're either going to fall under one or two things that we're going to talk about. There's one or two types of symmetries or layouts. So all animals except for sponges will exhibit this in some way, shape, or form. And many sea animals, like the sea anemone, have body parts that will repeat around the center of the body. And that's going to be our first type of symmetry that we're going to look at. And then these animals exhibit what is known as radial symmetry, in which any number of imaginary planes can be drawn through the center, each dividing the body into equal halves. So what that means is we can basically draw a straight line through it at any shape or any point. If it goes through the center, it will divide evenly on both sides. So no matter where we draw a line through that sea anemone, it is going to be equal on both sides as long as we go through the middle. So that's our first type, radial symmetry, and this is more often found in less complex animals. So our other type is known as bilateral symmetry, and this is when only one imaginary plane can divide the body into two equal halves, the left and the right. So if we look, we have a lobster on the left. Now if we try to change that line in any way, shape, or form, the lobster would not be perfectly equal on both sides. And humans follow this bilateral symmetry as well. Again, we'd have to go right down, like right through our nose, right across our chest, straight down to equally divide ourselves in half. So that's bilateral symmetry. We have radial, which means it can go anywhere. Bilateral just can be bi meaning two, lateral side to side. So bilateral symmetry. And just some terms to go along with this bilateral symmetry. When we think of the word anterior, so that is going to be the front end. So if we think the anterior side of the animal, that's the front side. And the posterior is going to be the back end. So these are just kind of some more scientific terms that we use. We're not just going to say the front and the back. We have to say the anterior and the posterior. And a couple other ones are going to be what is known as dorsal and ventral. So dorsal is going to be the upper side. Think fish and things like that have what is known as dorsal fins, and those are fins that are always on top. And then the ventral side is going to be the lower side. So we have anterior, front, posterior is the back, dorsal is the upper, ventral is the lower. So these are all terms associated with animals that have bilateral symmetry. Then bilateral symmetry also allows for segmentation, in which the body is constructed of many repeated and similar parts or segments. And the combination of bilateral symmetry and segmentation is found in two successful animal groups, arthropods and vertebrates. So arthropods are going to be our only invertebrates that have bilateral symmetry, and then all vertebrates will show bilateral symmetry. So arthropods, we'll get into those more, but those consist of things like insects, like the lobsters, crabs, things like that. And then cephalization, this is a new word, but it is important. So animals with bilateral symmetry also exhibit what is known as cephalization, and this is which the concentration of sense organs and nerve cells are at the front end of the body. So this is basically having all of your senses kind of at the front, and humans being their brain. Our brain is kind of at the tip of our head there, and that would be what is known as cephalization in humans, as that is our brain. So animals with bilateral symmetry usually move with the anterior end forward, so this end will come into contact with new parts of the environment first. And that makes sense. We don't see any animals really walking backwards or anything like that. The head is usually always leading the way in complex animals. And as sense organs have evolved, they have tended to gather at the anterior end, again anterior being the front, as have nerve cells that produce information and decide what the animal should do. So over time, evolution has occurred to kind of make all of the sense organs, all the cephalization, all the brains, if you will, to move towards the front end of the animal, the anterior end. So then our last trend in animal evolution is the formation of a body cavity. So most animals over time have developed a body cavity, which is a fluid-filled space between the digestive tract and body wall. And a body cavity will provide a space in which internal organs can be suspended so that they are not pressed on by muscles or twisted out of shape by body movement. So complex animals have this body cavity, so basically our heart, our lungs, our things like that aren't just kind of flopping around wherever they want. So they have to be suspended so they are not pressed on by muscles or twisted out of shape by body movements. So that's it for section 1. Let me know if you have any questions.